What do you think that the ARV or the after repair value is for this deal?
$935,000. So $70 per square foot with a 5,500 square foot house. I'm looking to make at least $50,000 off it.
The way you're running your numbers is confusing me. In today's episode, we're talking to Saul, who is a new-ish real estate investor. He's got about 6 deals already under his belt, but we're going to evaluate a deal of his today that he's gotten under contract, and it would be his biggest deal ever. He's trying to make multiple tens of thousands of dollars on it. He thinks it has an ARV of nearly $1 million, and I'm going to go through and very honestly critique and analyze the deal alongside him. So if you're a new or even intermediate investor going for your first or biggest deal, this episode is going to bring you a ton of value. Before we start, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you're not already. And once you do that, let's get into it. So thanks for coming to the call, man. Super excited to chat with you and break down your deal today. But let's kind of start at the basics of what type of real estate investing are you involved in?
So at the moment, in my journey in real estate, I'm just into just traditional residential real estate investment. Most of them just single families for now.
Okay. And are you wholesaling those? Are you buying them and keeping them for yourself? Flipping? What strategy are you using?
So my exit strategy is strictly wholesaling. I have partnered with a couple of investors in the past, which we have a really good relationship with, and I just hand them off to them. So just wholesaling for now.
Dope. And how long have you been trying to wholesale? How long have you been doing it? And how many deals have you gotten under your belt?
So I've been wholesaling for just a little bit over a year. With COVID and everything going on, it's been kind of crazy. It's not the traditional wholesaling anymore.
Sure.
And when it comes to properties that I've had under contract and closed, 6.
6. All right. Hey, that's big time.
Mm-hmm.
That's big time. So congratulations. What's your goal with wholesaling? What are you trying to get to? Because you've already got 6 properties under your belt. What's the next step for you?
So the next step for me would be to hold some of the properties under my name and LLC, partner up with some of the investors that are doing it on their own, so I can dab into that side of the industry and start building some personal wealth for myself.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. That's exactly kind of, the approach that I took to getting into it. What do you feel like is holding you back from that? How's it going? I know you got 6 deals under your belt, but are you happy with how it's going? Is there anything you're struggling with?
So I just think in any business, when you're first starting off, you're just working the business, just grinding every day, making the calls. You're the one that's doing everything. Just getting a system in place would be what I would say the struggle would be for anyone that's starting off. So you can manage the business as opposed to be working it the entire time. So finding systems in place to make it easier for me to close more deals at a higher volume would be my challenge right now.
Yeah. Are you doing everything? Are you a one-man show?
Yep. I wear a whole bunch of hats.
Yeah. And I'm guessing you have another job or something else that you're doing for income as well?
Yeah. I currently work for AT&T right now as a manager. So that's what made me comfortable with what I'm doing now, is because I'm in direct sales and I'm constantly talking to people and trying to find solutions for people. So it was a smooth transition. We're just working with bigger contracts now.
Right. You got that. You have that skill. You can talk to people. Right. You can negotiate. You can build those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. So you're wearing too many hats. What else? What else is not going well? Are you finding enough good deals to even put under contract?
So at the moment, I had to slow down a little bit, just because I have a son that was born not too long ago.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. So it's been hectic at the house, but right now, because how I got most of my deals are driving for dollars. I really don't purchase any lists or do anything fancy. I just drive around the neighborhoods whenever I have time, and that's how I kind of go about it, and then just SKIPTRACE and start hitting the phones.
So you're driving for dollars and you're looking for what? Distressed properties?
Distressed properties, decent neighborhoods that I see investors investing in because I know that there's work being done. Keeping my ears to the ground, seeing what developments are going around the city to know the right places to go to. just small things like that that I take into consideration whenever I'm driving around.
Got you. And then what are you using to kind of keep track of the properties you find? I know when I drive for dollars, I either use PropStream or I use Deal Machine. But I know
Mhm.
some people pencil and paper writing down addresses. What are you using?
So I use a deal machine. And then once I get everything organized and I take all my screenshots on my phone, I go back home and then I use Podio and I enter all the information there to help me organize myself a little bit better.
Gotcha. And then you're skip tracing and then hitting the phones yourself?
Yep. So on my
Yeah.
days off, preferably around 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, when most people are getting home from work, that's when I hit the phones.
Gotcha. So yeah, you're doing a lot and you're doing very time consuming methods of finding deals and you got a new baby and you're a manager at work. So I can see why wearing so many hats is a struggle right now.
Yeah, yeah, that's why I said like finding systems to help me organize, and maybe outsource a couple of things will be the next step to organize myself a lot better and have a lot more free time.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to think about because a lot of people will think about just finding one deal and they'll do everything, right? Like that's how we all have to start. You are every person in the business, you have to do everything yourself. But then it gets to a point where you put so much effort taking that one deal from 1 to 100. And then once the deal's done, you got to start over and you don't have any help and it's easy to get
Right,
burnt out.
right,
So I think it's useful for you and for everybody listening to think about what is the first thing in the process that we might be able to change. One, to be more time efficient for you. And then two, like, what's the first thing that we can outsource? Have you thought about the first thing you want to hire somebody to help you do?
cold calling.
Okay. Why
um,
cold calling?
it's a part of it, and you do get a lot of people that are angry on the phone. They don't want to talk to you, um, but it's a learning pain you have to go through because if you are going to train someone eventually, or if you want to set certain expectations, you need to have that experience first. But I would say definitely cold calling would be one thing I would like to outsource, and then after that, maybe have an acquisitions manager to vet those leads a lot better, and then I come in and close them down.
Right. Okay. Have you thought about where to look for cold calling or for a cold caller?
No idea.
Yeah.
I'm so
I
I'm so
actually,
I'm so stuck in just running everything right now that
yeah.
once things get a little bit better, then maybe I'll start expanding a little bit more.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna message you, and I'll also put this in the description for anybody that's listening. I know a investor who's actually out in Baltimore. He makes content as well, and he has a company where he helps place cold callers with investors, so that you kind of get a pre-trained cold caller already on your team to help you out. And so I haven't worked with one of his cold callers before, so I can't say good, bad, whatever. But I do know that's a service he offers, so I'll send it your way so you can at least check it out. Let's talk about some of the less time consuming methods of finding deals because I know it's probably a lot of people like you got a full-time job, they got kids, and it's a lot. Driving for dollars takes time. Then you got to go cold call your list, that takes time.
Right.
And then you got to be getting cussed out when you could be playing with your new baby. So I get it, but have you considered any other methods of finding deals?
Finding deals, I've seen on social media because I do follow a couple people, which is buying leads,
Mhm.
um, like pre-foreclosure lists, absentee owners, um, fire damage properties. I've heard of them, but I just haven't. I haven't been confident enough to buy those leads because I just don't know how filtered are they, or how many people has already contact those. I know when I drive for dollars, I have a good understanding of what I'm looking at and the situations that the house are in, as opposed to just kind of blindly calling. But I feel a lot of people have success with those leads. So
Yeah.
here in the near future, I'm looking forward to purchasing a couple of lists and giving them a try.
Okay, so let's talk about it. Let's make sure that you're not wasting your money. First, let's think about how much money do you have to work with in terms of what's our budget for finding leads and trying to do it in a more time convenient way.
Budget would be, I would say, it would be relevant to the potential earnings on the assignment fee that we can make. So, for example, if we can make
Sure.
5, 10K on a lead, on a property, couple $100 will be okay.
Yeah, I get that. It's a hard way to think about it though, right? Because you're
Right.
trying to work from something that might be 30, 60, 90 days out.
Right.
And I don't want you to depend on 5K, 10K, whatever coming in order to set your budget today. So if you had to say today, I can put $100 or $500 or whatever it might be into this. And even if I don't get a deal for 90 days or even a deal at all, I'm still comfortable putting that money aside. Like it's not taking anything away from my family or what I have to do. That's money that I'm willing to put into a deal. How much would you earmark for that?
I would say I'll be willing to play with $500.
Okay, great. So let's say we got $500. If we're going to think about how we build the list, that's only one side of it, right? Because there's one is finding leads, and then the second side is contacting those leads. So if I go to PropStream, which is where I build my lists, I can build a list, like you said, pre-foreclosure, fire damage, etc. We'll go through that in a second. But once I have that list and I have those phone numbers, I still have to decide how I'm going to contact those leads. And so for you, are you thinking that you said you want to get out of cold calling,
Right.
right? So if the situation is that we're going to find leads through pulling a list, and then we're going to contact them through cold calling, but you no longer want a cold call, we have to either put some of our money into a cold caller, or we got to put all of our money into a cold caller and find leads in a
That
freeway.
makes
Does that make
perfect sense. Yeah.
sense? So maybe instead of buying a list, we take that $500 and put it towards a cold caller. Would you then still be willing to drive for dollars if it meant you didn't have to cold call your list?
I think ideally that would work, just because I have boots on the ground everywhere to say, and I have a better understanding of what properties we're trying to target, and then just have the
Right.
cold caller doing the tough work, which is
Yeah.
taking the heat over the phone. Um, but that'll be
Yeah.
ideal, because driving for dollars, you could do it at anytime you have downtime. But when it comes to cold calling, it's always best to be strategic on what certain times you call. So I would rather have the
Yep.
flexibility of driving for dollars and having somebody else call.
Okay, great. I'm glad we thought through that because we were about to buy you a list and take you out of driving for dollars, but then you were still going to have to cold call it. Right. So I encourage everybody to just think about like, what's the first thing that you want to get out of and put your money towards that. And then as you start, getting more budget, then we can remove you from driving for dollars. We could talk about how do you build a list? Are you going after pre-foreclosures? Are you going after fire damage, et cetera? But I think right now, let's get you out of cold calling, get you driving for dollars. When you're driving, you're basically building your own list, right? Instead of having PropStream do it for you, you're out there building your own list. What are some of the criteria or things you're looking for that make you say, "Yep, I want to put that property on my list"?
So I have to see that the property has some sort of distress factor to it. So if I see a tarp on the roof, I see tall grass, I see the mailbox filled with a lot of mail in it, um, houses with broken windows, AC units hanging out the window, um, anything that just stands out that seems like the homeowner might be in a situation that I can be of service to, because at the end of the day, that's what we do.
You mentioned you do that in specific neighborhoods. And I know there's a lot of people thinking right now that they're like, oh, yeah, I know a neighborhood in my town where every house is distressed, every house is broke down. Is that a type of neighborhood that you would consider driving for dollars in? Or how are you choosing where to go? How are you choosing, which neighborhood to actually go to?
So I look at convenience. So if there's, for example, is there a Walmart nearby, a Target nearby? If there's any schools nearby. I look around also if there's any other properties that are in decent shape that looks like they have been renovated before, because at that point that shows some sort of interest in the neighborhood that there might be potential for growth. Um, so those are like the main things that I look for, and also taking into consideration what's like the medium household income. Um, am I in average, high scale, low income? Um, to determine if it's affordable for somebody to purchase this home, because I don't want to buy a prop. We wouldn't want to buy a property and renovate it and then just have a specific group that's only interested, because that'll make it harder for the investor to jump into it.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I think everyone has to remember that it's not just, is this property distressed? It's also, does this neighborhood have proof of upside, of investor activity? Because like you said, especially if you're wholesaling, but even if you're keeping it for yourself, you want to make sure that you're going to have comps, that you're going to, be able to move that property. So I know that you have a property under contract right now, and I want to go through the numbers of that together and kind of evaluate the deal. You have the property under contract at $275,000, but you think that the ARV is closer to $1 million. And so before we dive into all of the numbers, we're going to evaluate that. I have to say, I'm going to be honest on my opinion about the deal. Okay. So it's not to hurt your feelings or anything like that. If I don't like the deal, I want to give you just my opinion to help you as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, no, always, of course.
Before we dive into the numbers, I have a concern about Saul's deal. And it's not just that this is the biggest property on the block, which is a red flag, but it's also that he's using the price per square foot to determine his rehab budget and his ARV. And he's also making a huge mistake in the formula that he's using to get his offer price, which you'll see in just a moment. We didn't have time on this call, but I'm actually going to go back and reevaluate all of Saul's numbers, meaning I'm going to find comps for myself on this deal and look at the ARV. I'm going to put the rehab budget together myself and determine what I would offer on this property if I was wholesaling it. You can see the complete breakdown of me running the numbers on that property for free by using the 3-day free trial that I have on my Run the Numbers training program. Saul actually ended up joining the program right after this call, because after that 3-day free trial, it's just $9 a month, and you'll get to see me analyze 2 properties each month, as well as get access to a 2-hour-long training on everything I do to analyze deals. You can completely go in and watch that training for free and then cancel. But something that Saul said after we filmed today was that for just $9 a month, it makes total sense to be able to send me your deals and potentially see me analyze them and let you know what I would actually offer. So if you're interested in joining that and you want to see the actual ARV and rehab that I would have for Saul's deal, be sure to hit the link in the description and go grab your free trial. Let's start with this. Is this a deal that you also found driving for dollars and then you cold called?
Yes, this is actually a deal that I found on the same street that I closed on a property. Once I got the deal on the contract, I just started driving around the neighborhood even more, because I knew it was a up and coming neighborhood, and it has a lot of value and a lot of potential. So that's how I came across it.
Really smart, really smart. You already knew there was a successful deal in that area. So, there's buyers, there's distressed properties. So you kept looking. Okay. And at what stage in the deal are you at? Like, do you have it under contract? And if so, when do you need to close it by?
So we are almost at the finish line. Basically, the property owner, they have another property under contract in Kansas, which they're looking to move into. But the funds that they need to purchase that property are going to be the funds that they will be provided at closing. So it would be almost like a double closing. Just
Sure.
The investor that decides to close with them will close. They will close at the same time with the real estate agent that they're purchasing the property from.
Gotcha. And what date do you need to get that closing done by?
So that's scheduled for December 28th of this year. So on or before December 28th.
Okay, so we're aiming to close by December,
Yes,
you said 28th?
Of this month.
Which is 16 days away?
Correct.
Okay, so we got 16 days. And you already have the property under contract?
Correct.
And the big question, do the owners know that you're wholesaling it?
The owners do know. They know that I'm working with an investor and that we're partnering up. I had an investor before that he was going to purchase the property, but it got stressed out a little bit long. We had to get a couple extensions because they weren't ready at the point, because it's a big property and they have a lot of things, and they weren't ready. Yeah. They weren't ready at that time, and it stressed out to the point that the investor he backed out, just because we understand. investors, they have money and it can't be tied up. And if they see something else, they're going to jump on something else and move forward.
Gotcha. So just to clarify, it's the homeowners that kind of caused a little bit of a delay.
Correct. Hmm.
Okay. And is that investor who you did initially have interest in this property, they're no longer interested? Did they move on to another deal?
So they're no longer interested. He is willing to help spread the word because he told me, hey, kind of like kind of feel bad that I couldn't close the deal, but it's business is business. I have to move on. But his network is a lot bigger than mine, so he has a lot more investors that he could communicate and spread the word to. And he said that if he knows of anyone that might be interested, how he was, that he'll potentially pass them along.
Gotcha. Okay, let's dive in and let's talk about the property itself. So tell me, how big is the property, the bedroom, bathroom count, and then tell me what type of condition it's in.
So the house is 5,500 square feet. It has 7 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms. It's a 3-story house with a basement.
3 stories plus the basement, or it's like basement and then 2 stories?
No, so it's basement, then the first level where the dining room, kitchen is. Then the second level, it's where the bedrooms and the bathrooms are. And then the third level is where basically the master suite is.
Okay, so basement plus 3 levels. And then you said there's a mother-in-law suite?
Mother-in-law suite with I believe is a 2 or 3 car garage attached to it towards the back.
And is that mother-in-law suite separate from the house or it's connected?
Separate from the house.
Okay, so we've got a big property here.
So including the mother-in-law suite is a little bit over 5,500 square feet.
Okay, so one thing that I really like is I like that the property has a mother-in-law suite. That really appeals to investors. I've invested in a lot of properties that have mother-in-law suites because they're great Airbnbs. They're great extra rentals. But I'll be honest, something that scares me right away is just how big this property is, because it means that it can't be cheap. And once we start getting to a higher echelon of prices, then our buyer pool gets smaller.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's talk about some of the numbers that you've put together on the property. What do you think that the ARV or the after repair value is for this deal?
So taking into consideration 5,500 square feet, and then the comps that I saw in the neighborhood that were selling were between $175 to $177 per square foot. I decided to be a little bit more conservative, drop it down to 170, which brings that to $935,000.
So you're looking at $170 per square foot. And you said that that puts you at what for your ARV?
935,000.
935K. All right. I have some concerns about that, but we're going to come back to that.
Okay.
So let's talk about the condition of the property then and what type of rehab the property needs.
Mm-hmm. So
what do you anticipate?
The rehab, to get it to the point, what I was anticipating is to get it at the level in which I saw 2 other houses sell in that neighborhood. To get it to that condition, it has to be, they have to invest a lot of money, whoever decides to take it. And I came up about $70 per square foot for the house. So $70 per square foot with a 5,500 square foot house brings it at $385,000. And then I decided to add an additional $15,000 for miscellaneous expenses.
So we're just going to call it even $400K.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that's smart. Trying to be conservative, trying to put extra money there for your deal. So these are 2 super important numbers, right? Like, what's the property going to be worth after, and how much is it going to take to get it there? I let those numbers inform my offer price. So from your 935 ARV and your 400K renovation, how did you come up with the offer price that you gave the seller?
So the offer price that the seller wants, it was based off a property that they're interested in. The property that they're interested in cost them 200,000 is the pro is the are the funds that they need to close on the property that they want to relocate to, and then they also have a loan against the home under a little under 60,000. So I told them that it only makes sense that we close at 275,000, which will cover whatever loan they have, and they will have enough money to walk away debt free, fresh new start with the 200 for the new property that they need.
Got you. I think that's a very nice way of thinking about it, right? You're trying to help the seller. You're trying to think about what do they need? What do they need to walk away with? But notice I asked you, how did you come up with your offer price? And you told me what the sellers wanted. And so are you under contract for that 275 that they needed?
Yes.
Okay. And how do you feel about that? Do you think that that is a good deal? Do you think it's not? How do you determine that? It's a good deal for them. It gives them what they need.
Right.
But how do you know that you can move the contract for that price?
I was going off the ARV and then the estimated repair costs, and then I saw there was enough equity for the investor to go in, which will be over six figures. Because a project that big, an investor doesn't want to make 20,000 off it. The expenses
Sure.
that they're going to incur from interest or whatever else they incur during the process has to be well worth it. And I ran those numbers and
Right.
I found enough wiggle room that I thought that would be fair for the buyer and then for the investor as well.
Gotcha. When you say you ran those numbers, did you run them through a certain equation or walk me through your math?
Yep. So the asking price plus the estimated repair costs, and then also my what I'm looking to get, which will be the assignment fee.
And what do you want to make on it?
So I'm looking to make at least 50,000 off it
Mm-hmm.
because I would be partnering with someone to move the property.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it
Gotcha.
mhm.
All right, so let's add all that up, right? I'm not that good at math. So let's go 275 plus 400K plus 50K, right? So that puts you at 725. And what'd you do from there?
So once I added all those up, I subtracted that from the ARV.
So you take the 935K minus the 725K. And what does that leave us? What, 210, if I'm not mistaken?
Right. And that's and then I will subtract the 50K for the assignment.
210. Okay, tell me why you subtract the 50K for the assignment from that.
Because the asking price has to be combined with the assignment. Because that would
So what are you asking for?
so that would be 325 all in. So 325.
Hold on, I'm confused. Let's back up. So we have 935 for our ARV, right? And then you subtracted 725. Is that correct?
So the 270, so 935 minus the 275, which is the purchase price, minus the 400 for the
Mm-hmm.
repair, minus the 50 in assignment, which will bring it to 210.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
210. Gotcha. And then, or what are you asking your buyer for?
That's minus 50 for the assignment.
Gotcha. I must say, the way you're running your numbers is confusing me. And it's not how I would run my numbers to figure out what I want to do on this deal. So I'd like to walk you through. One, I don't know if your numbers are correct, right? I don't know if your ARV is correct or your rehab budget is correct. But I want to first walk you through how I would run the numbers with what you have. And then I also want to go in and kind of double check your numbers. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, bet. So whenever I'm thinking about a property, you have to be a little, not mean, but you have to be firm in the sense that what the seller's asking for it does not set the value, right? I could go outside and I could be like, I want to sell this iPhone for $200,000 because I need that to move to Hawaii. That doesn't make this worth $200,000. And so we're going to completely ignore what the seller is asking for. We're going to instead start with our ARV. Again, I don't know if this is an accurate ARV, but let's just rock with it for now.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go $935K. And then we're going to say our rehab is $400K. And then we're going to say that you are hoping to make your fee of $50K. All right. And from there, we have an equation that I was actually taught by one of my very first buyers for how he evaluates how much to pay for a deal. And the reason that I started using that equation is because if I want to pass the deal along to that buyer, I need to run my numbers in the same way that they do,
Right.
so that we get to the same number. And then it's like, yep, got there. He can buy it from me. Right. So the equation that he gave me was, I want to take my ARV and I want to multiply that by 70%. Have you ever heard of the 70% rule?
Right. Yep.
And the reason we multiply it by 70% is because of what you were talking about. The buyer, the investor, is going to need to have some margin. They need to have wiggle room because they have to pay insurance, they have to pay taxes, they have to pay utilities, and they have to make money, right? So I always think that 70% is basically giving them a 30% buffer, right? And that 30% buffer is for both their profit and for their fees. Okay. Once I do that, then I want to take away and subtract my rehab amount. And then I want to subtract my fee. And whatever comes out of that equation is my offer to the seller. Okay. So I can't start with my seller, what they're asking for in mind. I have to work backwards from what I can actually afford to pay for the deal. And so if your numbers are correct, let's just go ahead and do this math together. Let's do our 935 and let's multiply that by 70%. And then we would subtract our 400K and then we would subtract our 50K. So 935. And for those of you who are listening to this on the podcast app, we are showing the numbers on screen on YouTube. So come over to the good side. So 935,000 times 70%. What do you get from that?
935 times 70%. $654,500.
Yep. So I've got $654,500. Then I'm going to subtract 400K. And then I'm going to subtract 50K. So let's see, what do we get from that?
204,500.
Exactly. And this is the max offer price. Okay. So that's my max offer to the seller. This is how I would run my numbers. Then I would say my max asking price, well, not my max, but my asking price from the buyer is where I add that 50K back in. Does that make sense? So if I'm have it under contract from the seller for 204,500 and I want to make 50K, then I need to ask my buyer for 254,500. That's my asking price. And that way, when my buyer buys it for 254 and then I give the seller 204, I'm left with the 50K in the middle. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Gotcha. So what price do you have the property under contract for now?
275,000.
So part of why I think you're having trouble finding a buyer is I think you have this property under contract too high, right? Because if we think about it, the maximum that a buyer in order to put $400K into the deal and also pay you $50K and then also have margin for their profit and fees, the maximum that they would likely offer for this property is around the 250,000 mark. Now, you're not super far off, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of a property that might be worth $1 million, you're $25,000 off. That's not a huge amount relatively. You know what I mean?
Right.
But how does me saying, hey, I think you locked this property up too high, how does that make you feel?
I mean, it makes sense. The only reason, because I was trying to get it lower than what I got it under contract for. The only thing that made it difficult was because the homeowner has a loan against the home for $60K. If they would have not had that, I would have shot for 200. That was my initial offer, was 200.
Yeah, I
or
totally
maybe
get that.
even lower. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But
I totally
with
get
that,
that.
we had to add it to, in order to make sense, in order to even be able to close it, we had to add those 60 in there.
But you didn't close it. You closed
Put it
it
under contract, yeah.
on the front. You put it on,
Right.
exactly. You put it under contract by raising your price. And so you kind of shot yourself in the foot being able to actually close it. Now, in this situation, your sellers also kind of hurt themselves because you had a buyer, but then they couldn't close it because the sellers needed more time. And so you might have actually been able to get this deal done with your initial buyer, even at the higher price,
Mhm.
right? So there's a couple of different factors at play here. I think, like you said, time is of the essence. And I think you need to be really, really honest with them. I think you need to let them know that, hey, my partner wasn't able to, purchase it because of the delay that they had. And I wouldn't go back to them and ask, hey, can we lower the price? And then see if you can squeeze out and find a buyer. It's now the next day, but I thought you guys would want to know that Saul messaged me this morning and he is going to be able to get this deal done. The initial buyer who wanted this property was able to connect him to another buyer who's investing in that area. And that guy wants the deal for about $275,000, which is what Saul has it under contract for. He's not going to make his 50 grand. I don't know if he's going to make anything at all. But the most important thing is that first, he told the homeowners that he was wholesaling the deal. And so they've been completely okay with how he's gone about the process. And second, it looks like the deal is going to get done for them. This is why I'm so adamant that everybody is on the same page and that you are honest about what you're doing and that you know how to run the numbers and evaluate your deals. I actually just finished going through and running my own comps, getting an ARV and a rehab budget for Saul's deal. So if you want to see the breakdown of what I would have offered for this property, you can check it out by getting a free trial of my Run the Numbers training program. I'll put a link to that in the description. I want to thank Saul for coming onto the show and sharing his experience because I know how helpful it's going to be to so many people. Again, if you want to see more content like this on the channel, please don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, thanks for watching.